Welcome once again to the Gaming News Canada show presented by Bede Gaming. I'm your host, Steve McAllister. Last week was another one of the action-packed variety for the business of sports betting and gaming here in Canada and south of the border in the US of A. As Gaming News Canada reported first in the newsletter 6 days ago, Alberta Liquor Gaming Cannabis has opened registration to operators and service or goods suppliers to do business in the province's new legal gambling marketplace. The Canadian Gaming Association last week introduced its new responsible gaming advertising code and the appointment of a new chair to its board of directors. Also last week, a point-shaving scheme involving some 40-plus players on 17 NCAA Division I men's basketball teams resulted in a dozen of games over the previous 2 seasons being fixed by a gambling ring that included a former NBA player, according to a federal indictment that was unsealed last Thursday in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. That news broke some 24 hours after the PGA Tour announced an expansion of its current partnership with Integrity Compliance 360 as a means to keeping tabs on potential betting shenanigans on the men's professional golf tour. So what better timing than to bring back to the Gaming News Canada show the Chair Emeritus of the Canadian Gaming Association and the newest president, Canadian Operations and Managing Director, Global Advisory Strategy for ICE 360 and gaming industry veteran, Ilkim Hincer. Hey, Ilkim, thanks very much for coming back to the show.
Dave, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to come back to this podcast with you.
Hey, Ilkim, we're recording this interview on Friday, January 16th. So, and this podcast will come out in another busy week for the gaming industry with ICE Barcelona happening in Spain. First, I just want to ask you, we haven't had a chance to talk since you took on the new role. You joined ICE 360 in October, and maybe just talk to you to start the podcast just on what attracted you to this job and that is a rather long business title. I'm thinking you have an oversized business card for that. But what are your priorities with the new gig?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. ICE 360 and I joined forces in October. I think it was literally a few days before the G2E conference in October. And now it's been a few months. And yes, next week, the ICE conference in Barcelona will be the next conference that I'll be attending wearing the ICE 360 hat. So by the time this airs, I guess some of us won't be in the snow in Ontario, and my apologies for those of us who will be. I've known ICE 360 for some time, and I've followed their progress in the industry going back a number of years. You may know that ICE 360, as it is today, its current iteration, is a combination of 2 organizations, Odds On Compliance and US Integrity. And these 2 organizations built very similar trajectories in the reg tech advisory space, in the gaming compliance space over the years. Both created and developed tremendous reputations for being part of the ecosystem in safeguarding the industry and its stakeholders. And they joined forces a few years ago, and I've followed them wearing different hats in the industry. As you know, I've worked for operators, I've worked for other stakeholders in this space, and I knew, and obviously am directly involved in its involvement in the Ontario model. It was one of the integrity monitors certified, essentially approved to be the official integrity monitors in Ontario when the model was launched only a few years ago. And so I've always had an interest in this space, and I've, as you probably recall, I've had a lot of involvement in the ecosystem in Canada. And in speaking with the founders, Eric Frank and Scott Satan, we were looking for opportunities to collaborate. And first of all, to increase ICE 360's footprint in Canada. And secondly, I've certainly fully believed that the ecosystem is a global one in this industry and its adjacent specialities and adjacent industries. So we have been looking at for some time, or they have been looking at, and then we started talking about growth internationally, not just in Canada or the US. They do already have a presence in the Brazil market, and there's already a number of other clients and work being done in Europe as well. And we're looking at a few other jurisdictions very actively. And so we thought, hey, given my background, given my interest in Canada primarily, and then secondly, with my footprint and experience in the industry globally, internationally, let's grow the business internationally and let's grow our impact on the ecosystem. And so my role is that to grow our footprint in Canada to help enhance the ecosystem in Canada and also globally, internationally, as we make a push into other jurisdictions.
Hey, Ilkim, one area that I'm sure that you're concentrating on with the Ontario focus as well is the partnership between ICE 360, DataWorks, and iGaming Ontario to get the centralized self-exclusion program up and running. I believe Joseph Hillier, the head honcho at IGO, told Tom Nightingale from Canadian Gaming Business before the holiday season that his hope was that the new program would be up and running sometime, I think, towards the end of the first half of this year. Can you maybe just talk a little bit about your involvement in that, and does it look like the project is on track to launch in 2026?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Steve. It's certainly one of the major projects that's on our portfolio in our plans going forward. The joint venture is with DataWorks, an Australian company that has a very robust similar product in Australia. And I now sit in the steering committee for the launch of this long-awaited offering in this space here in Ontario. I'll echo the sentiments that Joseph's made, and I've spoken to Joseph about this a number of times as well. We have no reason to think that timeline isn't going to happen. I fully expect it to launch soon. Not sure exactly when, but a lot of work is being done on this from IGO's perspective, from DataWorks' perspective, and from our perspective. The operators are being consulted very, very regularly as well. Most of that is being done through IGO itself. I think it's exciting. I think it's probably overdue in the industry generally. I don't mean in Ontario per se, but once launched, I think it'll be an incredibly valuable component in safeguarding the industry going forward.
Hey, Ilkim, the whole integrity monitoring sector is a bit complicated, for lack of a better word. And again, since I've been covering this industry, data companies like Genius Sports and Sport Radar have talked about the integrity monitoring capabilities that they have. And we know in the tennis world, the International Tennis, the ITIA, there has a presence, and we know about the International Betting Integrity Association, and the Canadian Centre for Ethics in Sports plays a role in that. Kind of where does ICE 360 kind of fit into that sandwich, I guess?
Yeah, it's a very impactful ecosystem, I would say, but it's not a big ecosystem in terms of the folks involved in the space. The organizations you've mentioned are certainly very active, and each one is differentiated a little bit from the other, I would say. ICE 360 is not a not-profit entity. It is not funded by its membership, for example, unlike some other organizations involved in this space. So we're a pay-for-service kind of organization. We also don't provide anything other than integrity and compliance services. We don't provide call it odds or data ourselves to operators. We don't sell that. We don't have that. That's not part of our business model. So we consider ourselves a true independent integrity monitor across the ecosystem. There's interesting, one of the stakeholders you mentioned, the Canadian Centre for Ethics in Sport, we've been talking to them in the last few months as well. I've been talking to them very robustly They've just changed their name. I think I have to keep on remembering. I think it's Sports Integrity Canada now.
Yes.
SIC. I always go back to CCES. But they are, I think, a critical part of the ecosystem here in Canada. As you know, it's and as our listeners may know, it's a non-for-profit company, an organization that's essentially the only one across the country responsible, or rather, one that has a mandate for ensuring sports integrity. That includes anti-doping as well. They've been in that space for some time, and they now have relatively recently they have a new mandate to go beyond that in a very robust way. And we have been talking to them about how we can help them going forward as well. It's critical, obviously, in the sports world here to have NSOs, national sports organizations, or MSOs, multiple sports organizations, get the benefit of what the kinds of things that we can provide, and work with Sport Integrity Canada to make sure the industry is protected, the athletes are protected, the other stakeholders that are adjacent to the actual players are protected. And so we consider ourselves a bit of a go-between as well between operators, sports betting operators, like the operators that operate in Ontario and other parts of the world. So we have them as clients as well. So we may have, for example, we may have BetMGM as a client, or we may have FanDuel as a client. So they use our services, and we would also collaborate with Sports Integrity Canada to help them, be it from an education perspective or be it from integrity monitoring perspective. And we would also plug into the needs of the regulator as well. In Ontario, obviously, it's the AGCO, that's the regulator. The regulator has access to a lot of data, and we have access to a lot of data, and we work very collaboratively with every regulator in every jurisdiction that we're in. So we would have conversations with the regulator and the operator if it made sense, if some issue were to come up. And in some cases that may involve teams themselves, sports properties, and Sports Integrity Canada as well. So it's a complicated, but in terms of the number of stakeholders, pretty easily definable ecosystem that has a lot of challenges, but at the same time, it's one of our mandates to help improve whatever the gaps may be and fill in whatever the gaps may be going forward.
Is your iGaming platform truly driving your growth? Bede Gaming will partner with you to deliver an open API platform, powerful integrations, and unlimited configurability so you can customize, scale, and grow faster. Stay ahead of player trends and outpace your competition. Meet Bede this month at ICE Barcelona to find out more. For this next question, I was going to ask you to wear a couple of hats, but I'm looking out my window, Ilkim, and the snow's falling down on this Friday afternoon. So maybe it's wearing a couple of toques and instead. But I know you, along with the rest of the industry, were ears perked up when the news came out of Alberta last week, and I guess maybe just first, as someone who's been involved in the Canadian gaming industry for a long time at several different levels with different companies, just your thoughts on the information you've read about Alberta and I did talk. Funny, I talked to one operator again. We're recording this on Friday morning. I did talk to an operator this morning, and he was quite pleased with the regulations and thought they aligned fairly nicely with the Ontario model, albeit with a few tweaks. But love to get your thoughts on what's the news out of Western Canada this week as well.
Yeah, it's exciting. The next province, the next jurisdiction in Canada to embrace the private sector licensure model and open licensing model. As we all know, Ontario launched that model not that long ago. We're, I guess, about to celebrate the 4th anniversary coming up.
Yes.
In April. It was a lot of fun being at the TMX, ringing the bell the day that happened, not that long ago. I remember that very fondly. And that had taken, I would say, probably 10 to 12 years to come to fruition at the end of the day. with consultations with the industry, with government championing this from a channelization perspective primarily, and from a public safety perspective and innovation and revenue generation perspectives. It all took a long time to get to where we got to. And frankly, I'm not sure Alberta would have happened without the Ontario model being there first. Ontario had the benefit of being the first mover, but Alberta has also had the benefit of seeing what's worked really well, and maybe what hasn't worked as well as people had hoped as well. So Alberta has now moved, and in a bit of a surprise to me anyway. I was part of a technical briefing, and I had expected the regulations to be published for consultation. And yet, instead of that, what we were told was they're live, which is great. Frankly, the folks behind it, led by Minister Dale Nally, of course, he has been instrumental in getting this to where it is. But there's been a lot of consultation in this space. Alberta has been looking at it from multiple perspectives, collaborating with AGCO as well, and same with the AGLC, of course, as the regulator. They've had a lot of involvement. As expected, there, I think, was no need to reinvent the wheel. The Alberta model is pretty similar to Ontario's. There are some distinct differences. They have published a lot of very nicely summarized guides and information on their websites as well. I would encourage folks to look at their website if that would be helpful for them. And I think the philosophy is to use best practices that have worked in Ontario and elsewhere, but realize that it's an Alberta-specific solution as well. Again, there are some nuances that are different than Ontario, and launch as soon as practicable. As I think has been reported, there is no launch date right now, but certainly the licensing and the registration process has begun. So that's exciting. I don't think it's fundamentally different than Ontario. So if you've been in Ontario as an operator, as a stakeholder, or as a supplier, I think you'll be very familiar with the process in Alberta. Of course, the market won't be as big as Ontario, just by the nature of the beast. Ontario happens to be a bigger market, but at the same time, it promises to be an incredible market that I think a lot of folks are looking forward to, and we're excited to be part of that going forward as well.
What are the opportunities for ICE 360? I mean, obviously you're not a FanDuel or a points bet, but how do you see ICE 360 fitting into the picture here, Ilkim?
Well, we are one of the few integrity monitors here in Ontario, and I would expect that we would be the same in Alberta at a very basic level. I think replicating what we've done, and hopefully even beyond that in Alberta is what we'd hope to do. We've also been talking to other jurisdictions in Canada and North America as well on how we can help regulators in certain aspects of sports integrity or betting integrity. Not everything we provide is limited to, and I don't mean this in a negative way. We have a very robust portfolio of things that we can do. It's not only about integrity monitoring. We have some other safeguarding the industry and compliance reg tech solutions that we look forward to sharing with the rest of the country.
Is there a role for the company Ilkim to play with provincial lottery and gaming corporations? I mean, when you mentioned the rest of Canada, is that part of the strategy where there might be opportunities for ICE 360 to work with a Lotto Quebec or a BCLC or Atlantic Lottery down the road?
Well, absolutely. I think anytime we have alignment on what the end game here is, which is enhancing the safeguarding of the industry, essentially, in multiple ways. I think it behooves all of us to use the best tools at our disposal, and I firmly believe ICE 360 is right up there. It's got a tremendous product. It's got a tremendous set of solutions, and the Crowns have obviously accountability for conducting and managing gaming across their jurisdictions. And we've certainly identified a whole number of opportunities to plug a number of gaps. Certain aspects of what we do or what we see from a betting integrity and sports integrity perspective in this country are fragmented to a degree that I think doesn't serve well the industry and the adjacent industries across the whole country. And so we do want to plug into that ecosystem in a more robust way to ensure there's more collaborative data sharing, for example, perhaps across jurisdictions, to identify opportunities to plug other gaps from maybe a responsible gaming perspective as well. Yeah, so we're looking at a number of things to connect the dots on, frankly, enhancing the integrity of the system. And also the other piece of this, obviously, and what's new to me is the sports side of it, not just the gaming side. Gaming and sports, as we see on a daily basis, seem to be converging more and more in every jurisdiction. This is not unique to Canada. Certainly, it's a very robust debate in the US as to what's happening. And so I think, again, it behooves all of us to take all this seriously with technology being what it is, consumer expectations being what it is or what they are. And with these high profile teams, events, global events like the FIFA World Cup coming to North America, like the Olympics coming up, and a whole number of high profile, call it scandals, media blow-ups on some integrity issues. They seem to be, in the public zeitgeist almost on a weekly basis these days. These kinds of issues are not going to go away. And so I think ultimately making sure the sports side of it, as well as the gaming side of it, are protected in the best possible way is really ultimately what drew me to this space as well. The convergence of those two can't be overstated. It's happening on a daily basis, as I mentioned, as you know. And I think it's going to be a very interesting year in trying to figure out how to navigate some of these choppy waters. So again, some of these things are very fragmented. Some of these approaches that we've had across multiple jurisdictions aren't as unified and harmonized as they can be. And I think we have every tool in Canada to be able to be a leader in this globally. And ICE 360 certainly, I think, can be a huge part of that.
Yeah, you stole a bit of my thunder there, Ilkim. Like, I couldn't agree more in terms of a busy calendar. I mean, the Winter Olympics are just weeks away from Milan and Cortina, and the FIFA World Cup this summer is a huge event for our part of the world. And just we'll get into the NCAA, the latest NCAA scandal in a second, but it just feels like there's never been a more important time and such a need to educate any stakeholders around sports betting, just on what's happening out there right now. And on one hand, it feels a bit crazy because there is some black and white here on what's right and what's wrong. But at the same time, I know there's also a lot of gray, and that's a place where a company like ICE 360, and I think Sport Integrity Canada is trying to address that as well. And I think it's incumbent on national sports organizations or professional sports teams and other organizations to do everything they can, not just educate players, but anybody around the athletes.
Oh, 100%, Steve. One of the things that I noticed very, very robustly was in October when the IAGR, which is the International Association of Gaming Regulators Conference, was taking place in Toronto. It just happened to be hosted in Toronto, co-hosted by the AGCO, of course. While that was happening, one of the most exciting things to happen in sport in Canada in a long time, the Blue Jays run into very, very, very deep into the World Series was happening during the conference. And that was very exciting for everyone involved, including all the international regulators and stakeholders who happened to be in Toronto during that run. And so a lot of the conversation was about that, about sports integrity and about how sports is such a part of the fabric of our lives, not just in Canada during the World Series, but just across international borders. It's part of our DNA. It's maybe a cultural ethos that connects the dots across multiple countries and mindsets in a way that nothing else can. Maybe music is the other thing. I don't know, but sport is part of every jurisdiction's life, and because of the convergence of technology and because of the ability of some folks to use maybe even more modernized tools to do nefarious things, the risk to not just the gaming industry, but to this very part of the very fabric of our society, sport, at every level, it's at risk if we don't handle it properly. And so the conversation also happened to be around the time that there were a few big splashy announcements at the same time within, I think, this 2-3 day period. We had a couple of announcements by the FBI about one event or another, one scandal or another, and again, it pointed to the need for ensuring, whatever the gaps may be in this space, that we take that very seriously and proactively in a way that not just benefits, again, the gaming industry. This is one of the criticisms that I hear sometimes. Well, this is about the gaming industry that just wants to make more money. Well, no, this is about a whole number of things, including making sure match manipulation doesn't happen, making sure there's fairness in sport, making sure, again, this cultural glue that connects so many of us from every age group till the day we say goodbye to this mortal coil. Where sports is part of our everyday life, so it's incumbent on us to take this seriously and make sure we take all the steps that we can to protect sport as in recognition of the fact that there are all these challenges. Again, this isn't just about gambling. This isn't just about the gaming industry. This is about the protection and fairness of sport.
When I started covering the industry in February 2021, Ilkim, I mean, Matt Holt was one of the first people I met and talked to, and Matt was the original founder of what's known as ICE 360 Day, U.S. Integrity back then. And a lot of Matt's work in those early days was deals with the NCAA and conferences, and Matt and his team going into universities and colleges and talking to student athletes and coaches and other staff about integrity monitoring and match manipulation and that. I think I know the answer to this question, but I'll ask it anyway. And that's, just your thoughts on the latest sports betting scandal, as I mentioned at the top of the podcast. And we'll include some links in the text of this show to the coverage about this latest point shaving scandal. But I know that this is something that ICE 360, that there is kind of, I guess, active involvement in.
Yes, the last few days have seen a lot of activity in this space, and it's unfortunately, I mean, it's both a sad day and a bit of it's weird to say it's also a good day for the industry when these things are talked about. But yeah, I mean, all of our listeners can Google the current information on this. There are indictments that involve a lot of folks, and I think it's something like 39 players implicated, and 17 schools, and I think a couple of dozens games compromised, something like that, and involves not just activities going on in North America. And I say it's sad because anything that shows the vulnerability of this space, gaming and sport, and especially for those of us who really love sport, and again, it's part of the fabric of our life. We're all fans first, right? Like I'm a big sport fan myself, including obviously a lifelong fan almost of the Blue Jays. It's sad when you see this happen. These are nefarious things happening where they shouldn't be happening. And I say also on the flip side, maybe it's a good thing when these things that we have in place, um, remedial measures or attempts to mitigate these risks are being talked about, then maybe that's a good thing. It shows maybe that some of these things are working. It's sad that these vulnerabilities exist. It's sad that these things happen, but at the same time, our technology has been used to catch a number of nefarious things over the years. We've collaborated with law enforcement. We've collaborated with regulators over the years. Even prior to me joining IC 360, I was very much aware of IC 360's involvement with and collaboration and sharing of information with regulators across multiple jurisdictions, including in Ontario. And a lot of this is public. And if you Google certain things that have happened over the years, including with the MMA, for example, IC 360 had a role in trying to mitigate these issues and mitigate these risks. So, when I see these kinds of announcements, the indictments being made public, the announcements by the FBI, again, I tip my hat to law enforcement. I tip my hat to the folks behind trying to fix the problems and remedy these issues, and the analysts and all the folks involved in trying to get to the bottom of these nefarious activities and proactively creating systems in place to prevent these from happening again. So it's good that we're seeing that some of this works. It's good that we're talking about it. Maybe again, it speaks to the point that these are risks that we have to deal with, and perhaps we should take them incredibly seriously, perhaps more seriously in some instances than we have. But at the same time, anything that hurts the industry, that's hurt people, that's hurt the transparency and the fairness of the game, that's horrendous. That is an incredibly sad scenario. And IC 360 again is very proud, and I'm very proud to be associated with an organization that's part of the solution, and certainly, very, very much. We very much have our finger on the pulse of whatever you may see in the media. We're following it incredibly closely.
It's interesting. I mentioned at the top the announcement with the PGA Tour last week, and I think probably, I used to joke back in 2022 when I was writing the newsletter, it seemed like every week US Integrity was doing a new partnership deal with somebody, and it was almost became a bit of a running gag. That's no longer the case given the world we live in right now. And I think, tell me if I'm wrong, Ilkim, but it feels like the announcement with the tour last week and IC 360 now officially integrating its Prohibet product into the integrity program for the tour, that it's a necessary step that the tour believes that it needed to take in light of what's going on right now.
Yeah, no, 100%. We've had a relationship with the PGA Tour for a number of years, three to 4 years, I believe, and I'm still learning the history. But that's been on the integrity monitoring side, is my understanding, and now they have our Prohibet product. Now that's become part of their entire PGA Tour, and that's amazing. Yeah, Prohibet is a very robust piece of technology and service that'll help the PGA Tour even in a more robust way. And Prohibet isn't just about the more traditional way of thinking about integrity monitoring. Prohibet makes sure that the folks that you may not necessarily think about as being involved in the ecosystem are also protected and not permitted to be participating in the system. So this could be not just athletes, but it could be folks that are orbiting the stakeholders of each sport. It could be coaches. It could be family members of coaches. It could be folks involved in various aspects of whatever sport league we're talking about. And in the case of the PGA, obviously PGA Tour. So it's a very robust system, and it's real time. It's live, and it's got the latest encryption technology. I don't purport to be an expert on encryption technology, but from what I've seen, it's incredibly robust. So yeah, no, it does again speak to the fact that the PGA Tour is taking it incredibly seriously, and hopefully we can help them be even better than they were before this Prohibit product was added to the pool tour.
Hey, Ilkim, before we let you go, the Canadian Gaming Association announced last week that a couple of new members to the board, including Mike Miotis, a peer of yours, I think from Blake Castles, and Scotty Vanderwell, the CEO of PointsBet Canada, is the new chair. And I just wonder if you, as the Chair Emeritus of the CGA, if you have any advice you want to pass along to Scotty.
Well, that's a good question. Scotty is amazing. Scotty is very, very well plugged into the challenges and the opportunities in the industry. I don't think he needs any advice from me other than if he would like to. And now that I'm back on the board too, we'll have many opportunities to compare notes and commiserate over a few things. Maybe that could be done better, but also to collaborate on again how to plug gaps and ensure that we move in the right direction. The CGA's role has always been to across the country to try to again evolve or help evolve and advocate for the evolution of the industry in a positive way through education and through advocacy and through collaboration. And the stakeholders have never been more different than before. When I joined, I was with HRI, and so I'd had both a land-based background and an online background. Scotty comes into this wearing an online background, but at the same time, the membership of the CGA and the entire industry has changed. It's a very much more diverse membership than it was, say, 5 years ago. And then we have all these challenges with technology being what it is. Everything's ubiquitous in our lives. The exchange of information is ubiquitous. I won't even talk about prediction markets because of their nuances in Canada being so different compared to the
Right.
US. But yeah, the CGA continues to roll up its sleeves and really advocate for a meaningful evolution of the industry and to help make it a success and collaboratively work with all stakeholders. And Scotty is an amazingly talented, skilled person to be chairing the CGA at this point in its trajectory, and I'll do everything I can to help as well.
I just wonder, last question. I mean, it just feels like there's maybe never been a more that we're entering a critical tenure for the CGA or a critical period for the association. And I'm sure the early days there were some really important issues that had to be dealt with. Obviously, Ontario almost 4 years ago was a big moment, but it feels like all the winds that are swirling around the gaming industry right now. And you mentioned prediction markets, and even if you're living in Canada, if you follow this industry, you can't help but read something about prediction markets every day. It just feels like this is a kind of a defining moment for the industry in this country, Ilkim.
I think you're right, Steve. Although folks were saying, some of us, myself included, were saying similar things a few years ago as well. Maybe it's a bit cyclical. I think what I'm noticing, and maybe in part what you're alluding to, is just the speed of change, the rapidness of it, the turnover, if you will, of some of these issues and the evolution of some of these issues. Like if you look at some of these prediction market entities that didn't exist or were startups merely, a few years ago or a few months ago, and now they may be worth in the hundreds of millions on paper or billions and billions. It's interesting. How do you deal with innovation when it collides with existing, maybe slightly conservative way of thinking about things in terms of the protection of the public and the industry and delivery of products and consumer expectations? Yeah, it just feels like everything's just happening a lot faster, perhaps, than it used to, and everything's ubiquitous. We haven't talked about this. Maybe it's an entirely separate conversation or worth another podcast. Is advertising in this space, right? It's something the CGA is also trying to address. We published a code, as you know, which hopefully will be embraced. But this is part of our life. It's technology merged with sport, merged with gaming, which is really the discretionary spend of Ontarians and other stakeholders, depending on what jurisdiction we're in. We're talking about the gamification of a lot of things almost on a daily basis. Are we going to talk about gamification on streaming services next week? I don't know. Maybe that'll be the hot topic at the next G2E. I'm hearing certain things that people are talking about. So I think you're right. It's a pivotal time, but there are a lot of pivotal times, it seems to me. They just, we have all these peaks and not too many troughs. We keep on going up and up and up in terms of issues and just the robustness of conversation about them as well. And some of it does become politicized. Some of it becomes about money. Some of it becomes about consumer expectations. Sometimes we forget also the responsible gaming side has to be part of the ecosystem from the very beginning. And sometimes we do a really good job with it. So the lack of harmonization, some of the fragmentation of the approaches, I think is a problem. And I think perhaps we can help and other stakeholders can help on unifying approaches across multiple jurisdictions. And, one of the things that may make sense is for us to maybe look at the Macklin Convention as well. Like, we're not a signatory. Canada is not a signatory, but perhaps we should be. And a lot of work would have to go into what that looks like. And I know Sport Integrity Canada has a mandate that, again, if anybody wants to do more reading, it's on their website. They have a strategic plan, which I think is a very good read. And of course, we have the Future of Sport Commission report that's going to come out. The federal minister, Adam Van Couverton, has been involved in obviously a lot of efforts to try to improve Canadian sport. And what does that look like for us? Is it about funding? Is it about alignment of resources across multiple levels of government and private industry, sports organizations, creation of perhaps new systems of dealing with data sharing? I don't know. There's so many things. And again, I'd encourage folks to read the preliminary report on that Future of Sport Commission. But the point I'll go back to is sport is a part of our daily life, the fabric of Canadiana, if not globally. And it would behoove us to holistically look at these things and not myopically.
That is Ilkim Hincer, the President, Canadian Operations, and also the Managing Director of Global Advisory Strategy for ICE 360. Ilkim, always great to have these kinds of conversations with you. Wish you safe travels to and from Barcelona and the ICE conference. And I expect that you and I will get together on this podcast sometime in 2026, and probably sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Steve. I expect the same. Hopefully, with a lot of success from other Canadian teams and athletes that we can also talk about. And hopefully, this coming year, the Jays will go that further one more inch and claim the World Series as well.
Yeah, I'm sure Blue Jay fans won't want to hear you saying one more inch, because right away they're going to think about the guy. I'm going to butcher his name, but not scoring on that bases loaded ground out in game 7, Ilkim. But I'm gonna lay that one at your feet, not mine.
It was a fun game.
It was a great moment of the year for sure. That's it for this episode of the Gaming News Canada show presented by Bede Gaming. You can listen to this and all episodes of the podcast on the various podcast applications. You can also watch this interview with Ilkim on the Gaming News Canada YouTube channel. Again, thanks to all our listeners and viewers for your support of Gaming News Canada, and we look forward to seeing everybody again very soon.